So one of the many major problems that Canadians are facing with is the growing presence of complete censorship. That the parliamentarian is cracking down on Canadians' individuality, that they're cracking down on their liberties of freedom of speech that is supposed to be safeguarded from the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, that no Canadian speech should not be uh, defamed or taken apart or being jailed for wrongthink by the Canadian government. But the Canadian government under Mark Carney is continuing on the pathway of Justin Trudeau because of platforms like X, because of Rumble, because of people like me and so many others that are an antidote to the mainstream media propaganda, the swill from certain individuals that are propagandizing and brainwashing, fear-mongering people into indoctrinating them to believe whatever mainstream media shoves down your throat. We saw this with COVID, we saw this with the trucker convoy, and now we're seeing it more and more heavily present, and that is why these sinister bills that are coming forward, like Bill C-8 and Bill C-9 and Bill C-63, are so damning to this country. So damning to this country. Freedom of speech is an important value, not just for Canadians, not just for the development of our country, but for the development of human existence. Because if you think about it, if we didn't have the ability to communicate with each other and that some higher up, a lord or a priest or whoever the case may be, decides the fate of our speech and what we're allowed to say, then certain innovations would not be existent today if we didn't have the ability of freedom of speech. That's why it's a value. That's why it's important for people to understand that, and that it shouldn't be taken away from any force, whether it be the liberals, conservatives, whoever the case may be. It should not be taken away because your individuality, your opinions, and your ability to have the freedoms, the liberties of free speech and the ability to communicate is so vital to human existence. So, but you get people like this. So an Alberta senator is urging a federal boycott on Twitter X. A federal boycott. Now, we already hear this a lot from Mark Carney's camp. We know about this with the Liberal Party because after all the lies they told us about COVID and how a lot more people were trusting mainstream media and podcasters, listening to other people give their input, give their advice, actually go and research their opinions when it came to COVID. That was when it was, crunch time for the Liberal Party to mandate people back into their club, back into their circles of narrative control. And they were losing touch of that. The surprising thing is that it's an Alberta senator. And I thought Alberta was supposed to be the edgy province. I thought they were supposed to be, they're not like Canada. And that's why, the separatist movement, that's why they're so kooky and crazy. And we got to go against them. And here you have a senator from Alberta that's saying, no, we got to do a boycott Twitter, just like Mark Carney has been saying this. So this is coming from the Western Standard, saying a Liberal-appointed Alberta senator is calling on federal departments and agencies to stop using Twitter, calling the platform revolting, and urging Ottawa to follow New Brunswick's lead into abandoning the social media site for official communications. Senator Paula Simons, a former CBC producer, go figure, and Edmonton Journal columnist, raised the issue during Senate question period, citing declining usage and public dissatisfaction with the platform now known as X. The city of Fredericton also stopped using X after a city survey showed that fewer and fewer residents were still on the platform, Simon says. When will the Canadian government follow New Brunswick's lead? Simons noted that the Supreme Court of Canada ceased using X a year ago and suggested alternative platforms, including Mastodon? How do you say it? Mastodon and Blue Sky to replace it. I mean, it really shows the bias here. It really shows the bias there. Now, I'm not saying that X is perfect. We have already stated that Elon Musk fell into the trap when it comes to blocking people, especially people that are criticizing Israel. We know that they got him on that. We know that they got him with the Epstein files. So he's playing ball with that. We know that they're amplifying a lot of these Zionist voices to cancel out skeptics. But to do an outright ban, to call this to outlaw the ability for people to communicate on a platform, to go to Mastodon and Blue Sky, well, you get the direction of where they want you to go and where the narrative they're trying to push, instead of just allowing people to choose a platform. Choose a platform. It doesn't matter. You don't have to go on X. No one's forcing you to go on X. No one's forcing you to go on Mastodon. No one's forcing you to go to Blue Sky or any other platform. Let people have the ability to decide. We know why they're doing this. Given the declining numbers of Canadians using X, because many have quit for reasons of moral revolution, will the government consider embracing new social media platforms instead, she asked. The senator also criticized the fractured social media landscape, saying it has become increasingly difficult to spread messages boldly, even those that are true. Once everyone in the community was sharing the same information at the same time and reacting to it in concert, that doesn't happen anymore, she said. So, what they're basically whining and complaining that they're losing control. This is same thing with Hillary Clinton when she went on to MS Now, or back then it was MSNBC, and said that they're losing control. They're losing control of the narrative, so they got to freak out. They have to do all the censorship, because if they lose control, then that's it. That's it. They lost the population. They lost the ability of culture. They lost the ability to control and manipulate people. And that's been damning for them for the last couple of years because of everything that we're now being told about Epstein, about COVID, about Ukraine, about all the things that we were suckered into because it was our duty. It was our goal. It's what makes you a model citizen. You want to be a model citizen. You want to be a polite Canadian. So you got to step into line. You got to play ball. You got to go with the flow. And if you go out of the flow, then you're a crazy lunatic. You're a crazy lunatic for, doing your own research. You're a crazy lunatic from referring doctors' opinions about how dangerous the COVID injection was. You're a crazy lunatic if you believe someone like Joe Rogan, who got COVID, took a bunch of different medications, including ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine, and got himself better within a few days. You're a crazy lunatic if you think like that. So we got to demonize platforms because no one's believing us anymore. Instead of holding yourself accountable. Instead of holding the party accountable. Instead of holding the government accountable for all the lies, the defamations they put upon Canadians. Because the number one perpetrator of lying is the government itself. And the second is the mainstream media parroting these lies because they're not holding anyone accountable. And a way distant third is randos on the internet. A way distant third. Senator Pierre Moreau of Quebec, government representative in the Senate, declined to comment, but he would raise the issue. Research commissioned by the Privy Council in 2023 shows Canadians spend between 3 and 5 hours daily on social media with platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, LinkedIn, YouTube, and Snapchat being the most common. Facebook and Twitter are used mainly to react to posts from friends, family, and public figures, while LinkedIn is primarily for professional networking and skill development. Obviously, that goes without question. But it is amazing that they're going full stench on trying to silence voices on a platform. They're trying to diminish a platform because they can't control people. They can't control people. They've already tried. They're trying to go after Rumble as well because Rumble is not in the hands of developers that they can easily get access to. They can't just send a representative. They can't get a lobbyist to work with the government, to work with Google, to silence out people. Rumble is different that way. Rumble is a better platform when it comes to content creation. And because of that, they need to go after it. They need to go after it because they're losing control. So here's Mark Carney saying Canada has to ready to limit free speech. Canada has to get ready to limit its free speech. My God, I didn't realize Mark Carney was an Israeli billionaire. Is that you, Shlomo Kramer? That was his name, right, on CNBC? That said we got to limit free speech. We got to limit freedom of speech. You got to limit the First Amendment for Americans, and Canada has to limit their free speech because that's how a healthy democracy survives, right? When we suppress and silence the majority of people, that's how democracy survives, according to these clowns. According to these clowns. And he goes on to cite racism and Islamophobia as the reasons. That's not the case here. That's not the case here. So here's Mark Carney lying to people to try to fearmonger people that, yeah, you have to give up your free speech.
Large American online platforms have become seas of racism, misogyny, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, and hate in all its forms. And they're being used by criminals to harm our children.
As opposed to right now, we're seeing the Epstein documents. We're seeing people complicit of covering up the Epstein files, covering up the international cabal of satanic, cannibal, children eating, children raping individuals who should be highly prosecuted right now. And I don't care what country it comes from. I don't care if it's Canada and their Justice Department getting involved in this. I don't care if it's America. I don't care where it comes from. These people need to be punished. These people need to be severely, consequentially punished for the sinister actions they have inflicted on children and on the world in general. But they're not saying a word about that. No, they're saying the randos on the internet. You know, the ones that you just can scroll by and ignore, or you can mute them, or you don't even have to go on social media.
My government will act. And today we're announcing our plan to fight crime, to protect Canadians, and to build communities that are safe, secure, and strong. A plan to make Canada secure, to make Canada strong.
By not allowing freedom of speech, we're going to make Canada strong and secure by suppressing people's ability to think, to have an opinion. How is that making a country strong? How is that making a country strong? Again, I always use this argument when it comes to people, pro-censorship, when they say that free speech has to have limitations. Okay, name a time in human history that censorship was put upon the majority of people and it worked for the better. You can't. You can't. Because that is how important freedom of speech is. It is important for the stability, not just of Canadians, not just of Americans, but the human existence. There's a reason why we have brains. There's a reason why we have individual thoughts. That's why we communicate with each other. That's why we have conversations. You don't have to like what someone's opinion is, but you have to express and you have to respect that they're allowed to voice their opinion the same way you're allowed to voice your opinion. That's what makes it a right. That's what makes it a value. If you start cookie cuttering certain people because you disagree with them or they're crazy or lunatic or a bit of a lunatic in your opinion, then you don't value freedom of speech. You don't value freedom of speech because you have to value speech that you don't like, speech that you find bad. That's what Charlie Kirk always said. And look what happened to him. So it is unbelievable. It is unbelievable that they're doing this, that they're openly doing this. So here's Liz Churchill. This is the senator, by the way, the Alberta senator. This is a 2026 picture of a Canadian politician demanding to ban X from Canada. So that's the type of individual that wants to silence out people. A a woman still wearing a mask in 2026. That's the kind of moronic person that, of course, wants to ban X, because God forbid people can't form their own opinions. People can't do their own critical thinking to deter what's right and what's wrong. Oh my God, we can't allow people to actually have an opinion, have their brains function like actual adults. We can't allow this to happen, because Islamophobia and racism, oh my God, people are just so stupid, they're going to fall into this trap. So obviously, the government needs to step in. The government needs to silence people. What moronic people. What moronic people. Here's Mark Nixon. Now, this is a video back from last March, because this has been ongoing for many years. This has been going since Trudeau. Since Justin Trudeau's administration. They've been trying to do this nonstop. They've been trying every which way to silence out dissenting voices, especially ones coming from America. Because, God forbid, Canada hears outsider voices from anywhere around the world. They might start looking at our country and think, hey, why aren't we taking a part of this? Why aren't we doing some similar things that other countries have done and turned successful? Why aren't we collaborating with each other? Why are we getting into this feud and saying that pure polyethnic conservatives are the cause of problems when we know the problems are majorly caused by the Liberal Party, because they are the ruling power right now? Why are we, again, they're doing this intentionally. And here's Mark Nixon pointing this out.
The Liberal, NDP, and the Green Party, they want to do this. I've compiled all the evidence we have so far, and I will let you decide. Let's go.
Address that issue, especially when it's an, as she said, existential threat to democracy.
Watching Elon Musk parade around the world as the new emperor of all, along with his buddy Donald Trump, I am deeply concerned for the next election. In Canada, I think Musk interfering in Germany's elections on the side of the far-right parties that want to play footsie with Nazis and say we don't have to feel guilty.
Wants to play footsies with Nazis. As Elizabeth May not only allowed for Canadians to get beaten up by the RCMP during the trucker convoy, she said nothing. She was complicit. She played ball with the Liberal Party, with the establishment. You know, she's also wearing a Ukrainian pin. And I don't have to go into specific detail for people to understand that Ukraine has neo-Nazis. We're literally giving weapons and cash, liquidating our assets to a bunch of neo-Nazi thugs in Eastern Europe, the most corrupted nation in Eastern Europe. What the hell is she talking about? What's she talking about? Oh, Elon Musk and Donald Trump are going around the world and parading around with Nazis. What the hell are you talking about? You realize we brought a bunch of Nazis into our country purposely. You applauded a Nazi twice in Parliament, all of you. And when we want answers, we want a list and details of the Nazis you brought into the country, you're deliberately covering that up. Which that's another thing that should be brought to attention now that we get the Epstein files out. When are we going to get those lists out? When are we going to get details to know exactly who you brought into this country, granted them citizenship, even though they're Nazi war criminals, even though they killed Jewish and Polish citizens in World War II, we granted them citizenship because guess what? They're anti-communist. Oh, that's a great measure. You can be a rogue killer and kill thousands of people, but at least you're not a communist. Wow.
About our past on International Day of Holocaust Remembrance. This is pretty offensive stuff. Our solution in the Green Party is we as Canadians and our government should say there's no such thing as a platform. You're a publisher, and Meta and Twitter and X and all of them would have to abide by the jurisprudence of hundreds of years of a publisher's responsibility for what they publish. And the anonymous and rule-free world in which social media operates could end simply and quickly, but of course Parliament would have to be in session, to say, in Canada, we don't recognize something called a platform. You've invented this term for yourselves.
We don't recognize a thing called a platform. What the hell is she talking about? What the hell is she talking about? We don't recognize a platform. We don't recognize the fact that since the dawning of social media, the whole intent of being social on social media is that people are allowed to go on this platform and communicate with each other from all around the world. That's the beauty of social media. That was the whole intent of social media. But people like Elizabeth May, who claims to be, an outsider, she's part of the Green Party. Like, she only gets one seat. She's a rebel. She's a rebel, apparently. They say, no, Canadians don't get the opportunity for a platform. Platforms don't exist in Canada. What are you talking about? What are you talking about? So we're not allowed to say anything on the internet? Is that what you're complying? That no, because Elon Musk, and my personal view of Elon Musk, and again, I'm not defending Elon Musk or Donald Trump in any means, but because of Elon Musk buying X, it's slightly better. It's slightly better that we have at least the ability to be more communicative on social media, that there are platforms available. Again, I mentioned Rumble as being one of them for people that are sick and tired of YouTube. But, Canadians don't have the right to a platform. What the hell are you talking about? What the hell are you talking about? This is the dumbest thing I've heard coming out of drunk as a skunk, Elizabeth May.
So that you can, as profiteering transnational corporations, interfere in our lives and harvest our lives to make money for yourselves, threatening our democracy, threatening our journalism. So you're publishers, and we're...
As opposed to that we've been doing all this time. All this time. You don't think COVID was doing that? You don't think COVID was doing that, conspiring to get in bed with our journalists, to lie, to manipulate? You don't think the big pharmaceuticals that made billions of dollars off the death and disparity of our public, you don't think they're coerced in international affairs? Yeah, what is this woman talking about? What is this woman talking about? As she's wearing pins that represent the worst of the worst. Like, this is so embarrassing. It's so embarrassing that this is the Green Party. This is the Green Party. I mean, it literally is amazing. Elizabeth May spewing this garbage out. And yet, you look at the United States, you look at Jill Stein, who ran the Green Party. She was an actual, I would say a moderate rebel. She didn't go all the way, but she was definitely better on situations like this than freaking drunk as a skunk Elizabeth May. Oh, Canadians don't have the right to a platform because, oh my God, they could spread messages all across and interfere with our affairs. What are you talking about?
We're not going to censor what you publish, but if someone wants to sue you, you'll be responsible for the words you publish, regardless of whether it comes from a foreign bot or a Canadian citizen. The publisher's responsible for what they publish, and that would really clean up the sewer of social media.
Elon Musk.
I mean, how stupid can you be? How stupid can you be? And I say this to people because I know that people, try to avoid social media because they don't want to see, all this rhetoric. They don't like hearing all these, random thoughts and a lot of his bots. And I understand that. I understand that social media is bad. And, right now they're talking about how to, ban social media platforms for people under 16. I understand that. I understand that there's certain health risk and, it's not good to have all the screen time for younger kids. I understand that. Don't get me wrong. I understand that. And I agree with that. But this overreach, the fact that, we just don't have the simplicity for parents to be responsible for their kids and saying, hey, enough screen time. Like, what happened to parents' responsibility? Why do we need government overreach to verify people on social media and demonize them that because certain people express an opinion that majority of people may find uncomfortable or they don't like, or they reveal something? Why is it X or Facebook or any of these other platforms? Why is it their responsibility when all people have to do is not look at the content? You know, it's like cable TV. Like, you think of all the parents back in the day, they used to write letters to South Park because, oh my God, there's a cartoon that is making adult situation jokes. They're making sexual jokes. They're criticizing Jewish people. They're making jokes that are so disgusting for children. Yeah, that's the point. It's not a cartoon for children. Hence, why shouldn't you let your child be watching South Park in the first place? That's kind of the point. So why does the government need to step in this regard? It's absolutely crazy. Here's Jagmeet Singh. Jagmeet Singh, the now disgraced NDP leader. Here's what he says.
Musk is at it again. He's been sending hundreds of millions of dollars to right-wing conservative candidates across the world. He's also been accused of manipulating the algorithm on X to favor right-wing conservative candidates. He's recently endorsed Pierre Poilievre, who's accepted that endorsement. So we're worried about the real threat of election interference in our country. Sign our petition.
But again, they weren't worried about how Mark Carney came in at the last moment, how he took over a riding from a predominant Liberal MP for many years. They're not worried about that. They're not worried about how they cheated out Ruby Dalla. They don't call that election interference. They don't call the fact that a central banker who just left the boat from the Bank of England, almost corrupted that entire nation to smithereens, according to the former Prime Minister Liz Truss, came to our nation, hijacked the election, and now he's Prime Minister. No one's concerned about that, but God forbid Elon Musk endorsed Pierre Poilievre. Holy crap. That's where we got to go full stealth, ladies and gentlemen. That's where we got to go full out and disembarred platforms, because God forbid people are talking that it makes me feel icky and uncomfortable. And we know this guy is full of scum, and why he completely ruined the NDP, because he got in bed with the Liberal Party. He was supposed to be the opposite. He's supposed to be the outsider. Again, these people are supposed to be edgy. I thought these people are supposed to be edgy. The NDP and the Green Party, they're not supposed to be the typical establishment class. But as we're seeing here, they're part of the same club. They're part of the same club, which is why Canada is in the mess that it's in right now.
To push for an investigation of Elon Musk, X, and interference in our democracy.
Big examples of what they're proposing to do and something that they're already doing. So a couple of weeks ago, a very senior Liberal, he made this comment. He said, the federal government must make sure that they don't screw the thing up and make sure that we aren't denied our rightful place to make our own choices in the next election. What was he talking about? The platform X. He was saying that X should be banned in Canada. And that's becoming more and more of a topic of conversation among Liberals. They're saying that an entire social media platform.
Or sorry, my mistake. That's Rand Paul Garner, right? That's Michelle Rand Paul Garner. I was confused there for a second. No, yeah, okay. I want to confirm that.
Should be banned. And when you listen to that quote, what are they trying to say? They're worried that social media platforms that allow for discourse to happen will be banned so that they can have more control of the message. Now,
I don't know about you, but I'm sure they don't want us common people having conversations across Canada on an open platform. Oh no. We need to consume all of our information from CBC. Government funded, of course. So we know that 100% of the information that we are receiving is 100% not biased at all. We'd love to hear from you in the comments section.
Well, you still can. That is incredible, ladies and gentlemen. That is unbelievably just insane. And by the way, just to show how international this has gone. This is why this is such a powerful fight that people need to understand. This is crumbling human existence. The ability that our species is allowed to survive is because of the ability of freedom of speech. It's because of the ability that we're allowed to communicate with each other and, voice our opinions and have open dialogue. You know, you think of the smartest people that ever lived: Leonardo da Vinci, Nikola Tesla, Albert Einstein, the greatest minds alike. Imagine if censorship completely drove them out of town. Do you think we'd be living in the world that we are right now? Do you think we'd have an understanding of the existence that we have right now if censorship was allowed to prevail and we just gave it all up to the lords and kings that want to silence it because they want Vinicius rule over us? That's why this is so important. So, this is from Politics UK. And it says the government is working with Canada and Australia to launch a coordinated ban on X over Grok. Ministries believe it will send a powerful message to Elon Musk if countries do it together. So they're coordinating with other countries simultaneously to silence out Elon Musk's X. And again, this is not to defend Elon Musk. This is to defend a platform, an ability, a communication tool that people are allowed to communicate on and be on a platform and able to express their ideas through social media, which is the whole intent of social media. The whole intent of social media is to be a platform for people to communicate. If that's not the case, then there's no point to social media. There's no point to these sites. Why would anyone want to sign up for Facebook if it's a publishing site? Oh, you gotta pick and choose who's allowed to comment on. That's not the point of social media. That's not the point. You're completely dismantling it. Here's the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms. They remind us that Heritage Minister Mark Miller once said is warning Canadians about so-called illegitimate media sources. So like people like me, or Mark Nixon there, or Jasmine Lane, or Rebel News, or Juno News, or Anita. I'm blanking on the name. Sorry. You know what I'm talking about. Illegitimate media sources suggesting that Canadians should listen to the CBC. You know, the $1.5 billion train wreck that's turning to be. The CBC that has lied the entirety when it came to COVID. They were never punished. They were never held to account. The CBC is continuing to lie to Canadians. They're trying to, paint the perfect picture of Mark Carney, even though he's deliberately destroying the country. They're purposely lying to you. And he's saying that, no, you shouldn't listen to other people's opinions. You shouldn't have watchdogs. Just trust the CBC. Sounds like North Korea. Sounds like Stalin. It sounds almost vaguely fascist right there. You think. You would think that, Elizabeth May would have a problem with that. What about competition? What about diversity? Oh, we're not allowed to have diversity of thought. He says, when there's a lack of support for a public broadcaster, he said, I think that contributes to the spread of disinformation, and social coercion is therefore affected. It is not the government's role to decide what counts as a legitimate media source. What makes a media source trusted and legitimate is not how it is funded or how closely it's aligned with Ottawa. Trust and legitimacy arise from telling the truth. These remarks came from Minister Mark Miller, signal Ottawa's appetite for interfering with the free press. So that's what all this is about. And right now, it is so damning, and why this is so important is because right now they're passing the first wave of these horrific bills, Bill C-8 and Bill C-9. So Bill C-8 is the bill that would restrict Canadians if they believe that they are printing misinformation or you're spreading hatred or bigotry online. C-8 would allow for the Canadian government to call up internet providers and siphon off your access to the internet, to communications devices. They can go after your phones. They can go after anybody to silence you out if they believe that you're suspected of spreading hate or misinformation. That's what Bill C-8 is. Bill C-9 is when you are suspected of misinformation, that they can criminally prosecute you. They can criminally prosecute you under federal law. That's what these laws are implicating. And right now they're going through the first reading in the House of Commons. And here's Gun Grab Gary. I like the name of that. Gun Grab Gary. He's the safety minister. Formerly it was Dominic LeBlanc, and now he's part of the trade negotiation. So Gun Grab Gary is trying to explain Bill CA giving government the power to shut down an individual's telecommunications. But clearly he has no clue what he's talking about. I think there's a good chance Gary is clinically regarded. That's according to government.exe is correct, by the way. So here's your safety minister who's failing the gun buyback program. What a massive failure that is now touting around how we need to have these restrictions onto Canadians, limit their freedom of speech because of safety. Because of safety. And he has no idea how to do that or why he's doing it. He's a completely useless tool for the establishment. I guess he is a useful idiot for them. A useless idiot when it comes to us. Listen to this.
You mentioned the IP. Allow me to push back a bit. Part 14 literally allows the government or the authorities to go to any service provider, any part of the country, and ask them. That can be a gynecologist, could be a child psychiatrist, could be anywhere. But it's not Bell, Rogers, and TELUS. The concerns that civil liberties people have is that it is anyone with no warrant, with just a reasonable grounds to suspect that a crime may be committed, to then get a trove of data about if a person is a client or not. So the example you gave, sure, is a very simple one, but there's much more complex systems. So again, you said that you heard compelling criticism of this bill. How do you explain how far this goes without any judicial supervision?
You just heard that, right? How disturbing that is. How fascist that is. That's not just going to Bell and Rogers or TELUS or any of the other communications companies and cutting off your internet access. They can go to gynecologists. They can go to doctor's offices. They can go to anywhere that they have information on you, collect data resources if they suspect that you're a criminal. If they suspect that you're an alleged criminal, they can go through your accounts. They can process all of it without a warrant, without actual proof of evidence to prove that they suspect you of being a criminal. But they can do this with no warrant. They can do this with no warrant and then prosecute you through Bill C-9 under federal jurisdiction if they believe you're just spreading misinformation. I mean, how sickening that is. How sickening that is. And how no one's talking about this, but oh my God, Elon Musk. And again, I don't defend Elon Musk. I don't defend Donald Trump. I defend the ability of freedom of speech. I defend the right of the charters and rights and freedoms of Canadians. Just like Americans have the Constitution. Because that is a value that affects every single person. It affects human existence. Not just for the country, not just for democracy, but for human life to survive. This is so vital. And you got these mealy-mouthed monsters that are siphoning down to try to silence you and oppress you and completely cut out people from having conversations because they want unchecked power, which is what fascism does. That's what fascism is. That's what Nazis do.
Judicial review.
So
Listen
let
to
me just clarify, right? On the need to get what's called subscriber information, the singular information that could be obtained by subscriber information is this individual a client of, say, a telco or not? Like, that is the only question that can be asked. Beyond it, when you want to get subscriber information, the police need to provide a warrant. It's based on a reasonable grounds to suspect. So, look, if there's elements...
On the grounds to suspect what? Grounds to suspect what? Yeah, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. But he's peddling through this because that's what the masters want. That's what the oligarchs want. That's what the shadow government That's what deep state wants. They want complicit control. That's what all this entails. They want control of you. They want control of the masses. That's why they keep pushing for, oh, we don't need, other forms of entertainment. That's what CBC's for. That's what the public broadcaster's there for. How like state media in North Korea. Because you see how well that goes for them. So why don't we just do it for our country? Unbelievable.
Of it that we need to tighten, we will be more than willing to do that. But for the purpose of today, C12 is the focus, where lawful access is not incorporated in that bill. Thank you. Thank you.
So there you go, ladies and gentlemen. Canada's losing its freedom of speech. And it is just amazing to watch people. And I've had long arguments with people. I can't believe I even have to have arguments with people about freedom of speech. Because you hear some idiots out there that are saying, but what about criminals? What about, child bullying and cyberbullying? Like, we got to do something about that. Yeah, it's already embedded in the law. There's already a judicial process to deal with that. If someone's engaged in a violent act or threatening violence on an individual, yes, there's already means to do that. That doesn't mean you have to silence out people from discussing things on the internet. And if you think that, you are a dumb idiot. You are a dumb, useful cow to these to these scumbags, to these evil, nefarious, fascist wannabes. Because that's what they are. They are fascist wannabes. They want you complicit. They want you in their control. They want you in their demise as they're subsequently destroying the rest of the country. And this is why it is my number one priority of all policies is to defend freedom of speech. Not just the fact that, I'm a content creator, not just for my own reasons, but for the existence of humanity and for us to strive and for innovation to happen, for, just the regular roundabout of daily existence. Freedom of speech is the most important thing. That's why it's the First Amendment in America. That's why people have died and sacrificed themselves to protect this value. And if we don't have that, then we don't have a country. We don't have individual thought. And we might as well be living in a concentration camp, which we're slowly going that direction. We're slowly going to the direction of a digitized Auschwitz with digital IDs, where you're no longer going to be a person. You're going to be a barcode trapped in an encampment, and you're going to have to preach exactly what they're dictating. You're going to have to go with the flow, go with the narrative, or if you step out of line, we're going to do something to you. We're going to punish you, suspected of something. We can't verify, we can't prove it, but we're going to punish you just for the sake of it. Utterly insane.